Why is everyone getting sick? I know it's the 1800s, but like, why is everyone sick? Good morning, hello. My name is Trina. If you're new here, welcome. If you're not new here, welcome back. Today I am starting a reading vlog that I have been planning since maybe even before I started this channel, but at the very least, like at the moment I started this channel, I've wanted to make this video for so long, so I'm so excited that I finally get to do it. And that is a wintry, snowy classics reading vlog. You may ask, it is almost March. You could have done this the last 3 months. Wrong. You see that? That is snow outside. I have been waiting for my move to the snow in order to read these wintry books because winter in California, not the same thing as winter in the snow, okay? We've been waiting for this moment. Now, starting off for this video is a book that I have been aching, pleading, begging with myself to want to read for probably like 9 months. And that is The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. I promised myself when I first really decided I wanted to read this book, I would not read it without snow on the ground. There needs to be snow on the ground for me to read this book. I was convinced, and maybe I'll be wrong, maybe I'll read this and half of it will take place in the spring or summer. I don't really mind. But in my head, this is a wintry classic that I must read in a wintry atmosphere. So that is why I've been saving it to read in the snow. Literally all I know about this book is that it is about a collection of brothers and that it's very emotional and tumultuous and that it goes through their lives together and the events that occurs, and that it was potentially going to be part of a series, like Dostoevsky was going to write follow-ups but he passed away before he could. Devastating. And then it takes place in Russia, and that's pretty much all I know about this book. Why then am I so excited to read it? Because I originally saw a TikTok edit about this book. Yeah, I am a follower. I see TikTok edits and they get me so excited about books that I have to read them. So I saw this gorgeous TikTok edit like a year ago of a bunch of artwork about this book, about the brothers and like the setting, and it filled me with this incredible wonder that I was like, this seems like something I would adore. Like, this seems like right up my alley. I have to read this. And so now I will. What it says in the back is that it's a murder mystery, a courtroom drama, and an exploration of erotic rivalry in a series of triangular love affairs involving the wicked and sentimental Fyodor Pavlovich Karamazov and his 3 sons. Oh, so it's about a father and his 3 sons. Okay. The impulsive and sensual Dmitri, the coldly rational Ivan, and the healthy, red-cheeked young novice Alyosha. This is the translation I chose based on going through dozens of Reddit threads. I don't know if it's the best translation out there, but it's what Reddit recommended to me, and I actually really like this cover. I feel like it's very clean for a classic, and I have some more like beautiful version covers of this that I might also consider getting if I love it as much as I think I'm going to do. To start off, I bought a copy from half price for $8. I'm going to read it, and we're gonna see how much I love it. But just as a backup, if I don't love it as much as I think I do, I also have The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde here that I have also been wanting to read for ages. Maybe it's worth saying to start off this video that I don't read a ton of classics. If you're here for like a classic expert's opinion, not gonna be me. But the ones that I do read, I've adored because I've put like a lot of time and energy into making them like the one classic I read that month. And it like takes over that month. Like, they've meant a lot to me, every classic I've read. So that's why I'm kind of hesitant about reading both of these back to back, if it might like dilute the experience. So we'll see if we get to A Picture of Dorian Gray. I will at some point on this channel, but maybe not in this video. But I'm very excited to take you with me on this journey to tackle this absolute doorstopper book, The Brothers Karamazov. I'm already obsessed with the first line of the introduction that I just showed that goes, "The Brothers Karamazov is a joyful book. Readers who know what it's about may find this an intolerably whimsical statement. It does have its moments of joy, but they are only moments. The rest is greed, lust, squalor, unredeemed suffering, and sometimes terrifying darkness. But the book is joyful in another sense, in its energy and curiosity, in its formal inventiveness, in the mastery of its writing, and therefore finally in its vision. I love that. I don't know, that's such a great introduction. Hi, tiny update. I'm about 60, 70 pages, I think 70 pages into the Brothers Karamazov. I'm enjoying it so far. I like the writing. I like the challenge of reading a classic. I like forcing myself to really take in the words and not skim and really enjoy myself. So I'm enjoying that part, and it's been a while since I read a classic, so I think that's helping. I'm in the mood for it. It is a little slow. Surprise, surprise. I would say book 1 was harder to get through because book 1 is pretty much just third person perspective, the narrator setting up the plot, versus book 2 we're now having actual conversations, a lot of dialogue, a lot of plot occurring. Not a lot of plot occurring. Some plot is occurring, although I will say the plot that is occurring is just a lot of very long pages about the role of the church in Russia in the 1800s. And it's just a lot of I'm doing my best, I'm paying attention, I'm learning, I'm taking in information, but I want to get to the plot about the brothers. Narrator with Alyosha, well-built, red-cheeked, 19-year-old, clear-eyed, bursting with health, quite handsome, slender, above average height. Dmitri, agreeable looks. Medium height, agreeable looks. We can see who the favorite is. Okay, hello. I am still working on the Brothers Karamazov. The chances of me getting to the picture of Dorian Gray are going down every second. One, because I'm so invested in this book that I'm I don't think I'm emotionally ready to start another classic right afterwards. And two, because I think this is gonna take me so many weeks to get through, which shouldn't be a surprise. It is an incredibly long book. I knew what I was getting myself into, but I guess I wasn't expecting how much time and energy I'd be wanting to put in to not skimming, reading everything, catching any hints of stuff, being in on the plot, everything. So it's gonna take me a little bit longer than maybe I had planned, but that's okay. We take these things as they come. I'm currently about 132 pages through, and it's been a few days. I was hoping to finish part 1 before, which is the books 1, 2, and 3, before updating you, but something's about to happen in part 1 that I'm a little bit nervous about. Oh my god, the sun just came out. Why did it have to do that to me? Okay, we adjust. All I want to say is right now there is so much tension building up in this book, in book 3. Yeah, that's how it's separated out. It's separated into parts and then books. There are, let me double check, there are 4 parts and 12 books. So I'm in the middle of book 3, which honestly, when I put it like that, it doesn't sound that bad. I've gotten a decent chunk into it. It's just going pretty slowly because there will be whole chapters dedicated to going back and giving insight into events that have happened before the lead up to where we are in the story. Almost all of book 1 was just build up to where we're currently getting to. But now that we're kind of starting to get more into the actual plot of the moment and we're getting kind of caught up, it's getting much more interesting. I in book one, I was kind of nervous. I was like, I'm not really sure what the dynamic of the brothers are gonna be, because they didn't really grow up together. Like, they don't really have a lot of connections, and they're very different. And I imagine like, oh, they're just not gonna like each other. They're not gonna respect each other. But what's so good so far is that they do kind of like and respect each other, and that like Mitya, like the oldest brother, tells Ivan and now Alyosha everything going on, his two younger brothers, and like he does care about them and he does want to share his life with them, even though he has a different mother and he didn't grow up with them. And there is this connection between the three brothers, and also that there's kind of, this is not a spoiler, okay? This is not really a spoiler, but there's also, I think, a fourth brother, or like basically one of the servants in the household could potentially be also one of their father's sons, which I think adds like an additional dimension to the title of the book being The Brothers Karamazov that I was not expecting while going in. And I hope he continues to play like a somewhat large role, because I think that's so interesting, and that adds like an additional level of complexity to like these three brothers that didn't grow up together now slowly starting to build a relationship, while also there's this impossible insight that this servant who's like wandering amongst them could also be one of their brothers. And yeah, side note, I hate the dad. Fyodor Pavlovich, hate him. He's so irritating. He reminds me of people in my own life who irritate me in a similar way. So everyone who gets irritated with Fyodor Pavlovich, I'm like, relatable. I'm also incredibly irritated with the dad, the father of the three brothers. Unless I'm wrong, I believe the murder mystery that they were talking about in book one is of the dad. The very, very first line of the book is, Alexei Fyodorovich Karamazov was the third son of a landowner from our district. Fyodor Pavlovich Karamazov, well known in his own day because of his dark and tragic death, which happened exactly 13 years ago, and which I should speak of in its proper place. So we know the dad is gonna die. I'm highly looking forward to that. And through the entire first part of the book, they're like hinting towards it. They're like, Mitya is probably gonna kill him. Mitya is probably gonna kill him. You know, Mitya is probably gonna kill him. Like, somebody should step into this family situation before Mitya kills him. And I'm like, now it's kind of like a will they, won't they? Like, does Mitya end up being the one who kills him? Or what? Like, obviously, as it is with a lot of these classics in which the authors were clearly paid for the word, I think a lot of it could have been cut shorter. Like, I do not think every single page of this book is entirely necessary to the incredible themes that are being portrayed. But at the same time, I'm still just enjoying it. I'm taking my time with it. So far, it's not really been very wintry, but that's okay. It is still like a wintry classic. It is like set in Russia. There are forests, they're wandering around villages. It is kind of like a wintry vibe. So I definitely understand why people say it's like a winter classic, but there just hasn't been like a ton of, I don't know, snow or those kinds of like feelings. I do still think that I'm still glad that I waited for it to be snowy and cold outside to read this. I think it does match really well. Like, I would not want to read this book in like the summer or something like that when it was really hot out. There should be a snowstorm this weekend. Fingers crossed that that actually happens, because otherwise the snow has been melting, which is really sad. So I will be holed up working on this, which I'm very excited for. I was hoping to listen to the Brothers Karamazov audiobook, but that wasn't available at the library. It's a 4-week hold, so. I'm trying to pick out an audiobook to start my walk today because I need to start a new one, and I'm currently deciding between Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson, The Right to Sex, or Doppelganger, all nonfictions, all of them I have checked out from the library. And I think I'm just gonna try listening to like 10 minutes of each of them to pick which one I want to start. Does anyone else ever feel guilty when it's fresh snow and you're the first person out walking in it and you're like disturbing the beautiful flat snow? Because I always feel a little bit guilty because it's so clean on this direction. And then there's where I was walking from. Animal footprints. Probably just a squirrel, but still. My project while listening to an audiobook. He's beautiful. Look at him, he's so handsome. This whole confrontation between Grushenka and Katerina Ivanova is like my favorite writing so far in the book. It's so good. Like the tension, I want to like watch a movie version of this book just so I can see this scene acted out because it's incredible. We're sitting next to my aesthetic fireplace and ignoring the heat. Hello, welcome back. I have another update. It's been a few days. I basically just got overwhelmed by like the experience of reading a classic like this that is so dense and realizing that like, oh my god, I'm only 200 pages into this and I feel like I've read 3 books and that kind of like density. So I took like a couple of days, read 2 romance books in like 48 hours, listened to a bunch of audiobooks. I actually finished one of the audiobooks I showed that I was listening to when I was out in the snowy walk on the right to sex. I started it and I realized it was relatively short and split into separate essays. So it was like the perfect type of audiobook to listen to when I'm like doing different stuff. So I ended up listening to it in like 2 days, like really, really fast before I could even update on this and really, really enjoyed it. So just as a follow-up on my audiobook dilemma, I started On the Right to Sex, finished it, and now I might start Just Mercy or another audiobook too in the meantime. On the Brothers Karamazov, I'm currently 265 pages in. I'm on chapter 6 of... Oh god, which book am I on at this point? I'm on chapter 6 of book 5. And I figured it was a good place for an update because I was just reading it and we just finished a very long chapter about religious philosophy that really epitomizes the way I feel about this book. In which case there are chapters where I'm like, why am I reading this again? And then there are chapters that I'm like, oh my god, that was mind-blowing. I loved that. So it's definitely a back and forth so far. This is also a great book I feel like to do a reading vlog for because after every single chapter I'm like, I want to update. I have something to update on. I have feelings about this. So it's kind of fun to be filming myself while doing it so I actually have somewhere to put those feelings other than just ranting to my sister. Yeah, so I've gotten like 130 pages more through, and I'm definitely settling into the story more. We're pretty much just following Alyosha Alexei, the youngest Karamazov brother, who kind of, at this point, I'm like attached to him, but also not really attached. He kind of just acts as a self-insert, following the plot around kind of character, and we haven't really gotten a ton of him personally, but everything about him that we have gotten personally, I've loved. Like, I love that he's kind of presented as this like innocent angel character. Everyone's like, oh, our angel Alyosha, like our like he's so perfect because he's so devout and religious and he's trained to be a monk and all of this stuff. But in reality, he keeps making little mistakes and flubs and missing out on stuff because he's very young. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how he grows because then he like acknowledges those mistakes, and that part of his character I love. The character that we've gotten the most insight on, other than their father a little bit, but I don't really care about him. We've gotten the most insight so far on Ivan, the middle Karamazov brother, and I love Ivan so far. I find him so fascinating. Maybe it's because I just read like 3 or 4 chapters of just him monologuing for the most of it. But I'm really, really enjoying Ivan as a character. The way that the brotherly relationship in this book works is that Dmitri, the oldest brother, has a different mother to the younger 2 brothers, and he's also quite a bit older than the 2 of them. So Ivan and Alexei were raised together until they were went off to school. So until Alexei was around 11 and Ivan was around 15, but they were raised together as children. The way that Ivan is characterized then, psychologically, because he's kind of characterized as an older sibling, a very, very independent-minded person who still sees Alexei as a little boy, even though technically Ivan is also the middle sibling, but that wasn't really their dynamic growing up. And then Dmitri kind of acts like an only child because he wasn't raised with the 2 brothers, and he was kind of an only child growing up. So I feel psychologically, Dostoevsky is nailing those kinds of sibling dynamics in a really interesting way. What else? There's obviously a lot of philosophy stuff in here. I'm still kind of reeling over the last chapter that was about this poem that Ivan wrote called The Grand Inquisitor, that is just talking about a man who is lost, doesn't believe in God anymore. There's a lot of talk about religion. Yeah, I don't really, the parts I enjoy the most are the storytelling bits and the character focused bits, but I also feel I'm not skipping the philosophy. I feel I can't skip that part because it reveals so much about the individual characters, even when it sometimes feels like Dostoevsky is just kind of using them as a stepping ground for his own political opinions about the time and era. I'm glad that I waited this long to pick this up, and I'm glad I picked it up at this time, because I feel this is a book that could have been an absolute chore to get through in a lot of other cases. But I'm taking my time with it. I'm sitting out in the snow, going for walks, reading it in front of a fireplace, cozy at night, and just letting the words wash over me and just trying to pick out what I can from it. And I'm having a really good time with that. So I'm actually going to continue this tonight. The sun is setting, obviously. The moon is coming out. Oh wait, is the moon in the background? I hope the camera has that. The moon is right there. It's gorgeous. But I'm going to try to get some more work done on this. I feel I'm well brain rested. I read my romances the last couple of days. I had a couple of days of a break, and now I'm itching to sit into this for a couple of hours, hoping to make some significant progress, and I will check back in with you soon. I have gotten to part 3, but we haven't progressed that much further than when the last time I updated you. And we're not even halfway through. We're on part 3, but we're not even halfway through yet. And I just fought my way through 40 pages of Zozima's speech, which is a monk in the story. And he just gives a long ass speech about supposedly Dostoevsky's views about religion in 1800s Russia. I'm not in this book for the religious monologuing. I don't care. So I'm really glad to be done with that. I'm really glad that Zozima's gone, so we don't have to deal with him anymore. Now we're on to book 7, which is just called Alyosha. So I'm very excited for this one. And hopefully it just focuses on Alyosha. I'm kind of intrigued by the idea of doing a 24-hour readathon at some point soon, but that's kind of a leap because I am super distracted all the time, and I don't tend to just sit down and just read without distractions for long periods of time. So I thought today would be a good test run, a trial, where I'm going to set a timer for myself for, what time is it right now? Oh, you're my phone. Aha, I don't have a timer. It's about noon. I might make myself some food, and then I might set a timer for myself and sit down and just read, just read this book, The Brothers Karamazov, for 4 hours and see how far we get. That's the hope. I don't know if will I actually be able to stick with that? We'll see. Come with me. We're back. I finished my mini reading sprint. I didn't make it to the full 4 hours. That's where I stopped my timer. So I read approximately for 3 hours straight, which honestly is the longest chunk of time that I've managed to sit down and really read this book for. And I definitely feel it. My head really hurts. It is a tough book. I understand what people say. It's a hard writing to get into. Like, it's not that bad line for line, but just it's incredibly long, and I'm trying to absorb everything. I'm trying to annotate as I go and like really take it in. So it's definitely taking a little bit longer. I have read 2 books, so I'm on book 9. So I read book 7, which was Alyosha, and I read book 8, which was Mitya. So they're each named after the brothers, the youngest and then the oldest. And the big event, the thing that the whole book has been leading up towards. Like in chapter 1, we're told that Father Karamazov, Fyodor Karamazov, dies, and that the story, we'll get to that later. We knew that the book was leading to that point, and then it was constantly reinforced, both by the narrator talking about like the horrible event, the catastrophe, the day of catastrophe, and the other characters being like, he's going to die, someone's going to kill him, he's going to die. So it's not a spoiler, and it's actually really crucial, and that's part of the best part of the book so far, is like that build up to that event is so well paced, where like the story is very, very slow. We do get like a 50-page break for a sermon, and then all of a sudden the last 100 pages, everything has been happening. They've just been running from place to place to place. I will say this last book was, I don't know, not disappointing, but it was from Dimitri's perspective. I was really looking forward to getting more into Dmitri and Mitya's head, because it's mostly narrated from Alyosha Alexei's head, and we are told that Dimitri's really bad with money. We're told that he's careless, that he's a scoundrel, he's a sensualist, just like his father, which it seems like more of an insult in the 1800s than one that I really grasped at first. But we don't really see it in practice until we get to this chapter from Dimitri's perspective, and we really see how careless and sudden he is. There was a really good quote about him. Where is it? Where he's with a driver, and Mitya, Dmitri, is asking do you think I'll go to hell? And the driver is like, hell is meant for all kinds of mighty ones, rulers, great judges, and rich men, blah blah blah. That is who hell is meant for, sir. And you, sir, are just like a little child to us. That is how we look at you. And though you're one to get angry, that you are, sir, the Lord will forgive you for your simple heart. So, ignoring the religion part of that, just that is pretty accurate. That Dmitri isn't a bad person, but he's clearly not a very put together adult. He is very childlike and careless, very, very careless with the people and the things around him. So I'm both sad about that insight into his character. I was hoping that he would be, I don't know, more, but he is what the narration said he was, and that's okay. And I still like getting out of Alyosha's head for a little while, because man, does it get exhausting listen to him talk about religion. I still think Ivan is my favorite brother so far. He's not perfect, none of them are, that's not the point of the book, obviously, but I really, really enjoy Ivan's character. And we only have had one chapter, not even a full book, just one chapter from his perspective so far. So I'm really looking forward to getting back to that, but I don't think it's for another 100 pages until Ivan gets back on the page. So I'm really glad that it's so action heavy right now, because I don't have Ivan to carry me through, so I'll miss him. Yeah, that is where we're at. The big event has occurred. I'm really interested to see where the pacing goes from here, because it's been very rapid fire these last couple of chapters leading up to the event that we've been talking about the entire first half of the book. And now we're going into the aftermath of that event, and I'm really curious as to where Dostoevsky takes the pacing for it. Are we going to slow back down? Is this the point where we speed up? And what the brothers' reactions to everything are going to be and everything. So I am attached, I am intrigued. It's just very, very dense, and I have a bit of a headache, honestly. So I'm looking forward to taking a break now and doing something else, going for a walk maybe, working on my reading journal potentially, and then coming back to this with a fresh brain later tonight or tomorrow or something like that. But thank you for motivating me to stick with that reading sprint. Because I was filming myself, I couldn't like get distracted by my phone, so that was very appreciated. And I'll check back in with you probably when I've read a few more books. I feel like we're deep in it now that I don't need to give you as frequent updates. Maybe I'll update you in another 100 pages, another 200 pages or so. I feel like all of a sudden we've entered into a like cop comedy where they're all acting just completely ridiculous. And compared to like the first 300 pages of somewhat less ridiculousness, this is like such a dramatic change. Rip Dostoevsky. You would have loved to know that it was legal now. Me after 800 pages of this book. Is it worth it? We're finally here. Ivan, please save me from this depression. Hi, checking in here. Is Liza in love with Ivan? Because Dostoevsky is creating like a love dodecahedron right now. Like, I cannot keep track of the number of people that are in love with all three brothers somehow, all at the same time, and that each of those brothers is each in love with like 2 to 3 people. Why? Alyosha, her face was greatly changed. She had become thin and sallow because she's been sick for 5 weeks. In Alyosha's opinion, her face had become even more attractive, as it were, and he loved meeting her eyes when he entered the room. Priorities! She's like sick and dying. Hello. It has been a few days. I really wore myself out with that reading sprint of this book, so I kind of like have been slow rolling back into it, but I could not resist. Like, I'm in the middle of a book right now, because again, this is divided into separate books, and I've been trying to update like at the end of a part or at the end of a book specifically. I'm still in the middle of one, but it's 100-page, it's one of the 100-page books, it's one of the longest ones, but I just like can't resist giving an update because it's so good. So I guess starting off, I'm on page 634, so that's like, it's been a while since I last updated you. It might be 200 pages since I last updated this vlog. I was like, oh, I should stop here, but nothing's really happened here, so I guess I'll like wait and I'll update before the trial starts. I think the last time I updated you, the big event just happened, like the thing occurred that the entire book was building up to, and I was talking about like how exciting that was. And then I was like, okay, well then there's a section of everyone probably discovering what happened and like talking about it because they love their talking. And then there's gonna be the trial. We're still not at the trial yet. It's been 200 pages. It's been 200 pages since we found out like what happened or like supposedly what happened. And the trial for that crime, for the father dying, has not occurred yet. And we're still not even there, but even so much has happened in that time, so like I have to give an update. There's about 140 pages left in the book. So I'm like so tense. I'm like, I feel like both, for like an almost 800-page book, I'm like, there's so much more that could have been in here. Like, we could have covered even more content. Like, we could have done even more. I'm currently in the middle of the book that's named after Ivan, which I told you I was excited to get to because Ivan, so far, is like my favorite character. I love the conversations that he brings to the page when he's present. I love the way that he like pretends to be very cold and icy and like heartless in an attempt to not be like the sensualist, overly emotional person that his older brother and his father are, but like he can't stop himself really from feeling. Like, I just love Ivan's character so much. And I'm currently in the book that's called Brother Ivan Fyodorovich, I think. So it's just named after him. And at first I was like, where is he? Why is he not in the book that's named after him? Now he's here and he's having all these conversations and I'm just like, so much is being revealed and like, oh, the book is so good at like gaslighting you that I'm so shocked by everything, even though I already kind of knew that was gonna happen, but then I was like, no, like they can't do that, like I'm gonna guess this, but like I don't really believe it, but then it's true and I'm shocked anyways. And now we're so deep into it, so like my updates are like I'm trying very hard to be spoiler free right now, so forgive me for like tiptoeing around the subject. Sorry, side note, the names that Fyodor Pavlovich, the father, is named, has the same first name as Dostoevsky, and Smerdyakov, apologies if I'm pronouncing that wrong, but Smerdyakov's full name is Pavel Fyodorovich, and which obviously, because Fyodorovich is based on the fact that his father's name is Fyodor, but Fyodor, the father's name, is Fyodor Pavlovich, because his father was probably Pavel. So they've named Smerdyakov after, anyways, I just think the naming in this book is so interesting. But anyways, sorry, back to where we are in the book, is Ivan just met with him 3 times, and there's one chapter for each of the conversations they have over the course of 2 months that have passed since the father dying. And those conversations are just insane. And I don't particularly like Smerdyakov. I don't think you're supposed to like him, but I love him and Ivan's conversations on the page are just so intense and so interesting. And also, since the last update, we've gotten into the wintry vibes. November has come to Russia. There's blizzards, there's cold, there's incredible descriptions of like what the cold feels like when it's rolling in. And I was also reading a couple of days ago, it was incredibly windy out, and it was blowing up all of like the loose powder snow when it's so cold that the snow doesn't melt and freeze together, but just like stays as individual powder. And this, like the wind was whipping it up outside, and at the same time as I was reading a description of that in the book. So I'm so glad I'm reading it in the snow. Like it fits together so well. I am just having the best time right now. I was kind of getting a little bit frustrated. The narrator is incredibly biased, and it took me a very long time to realize that. I think it wasn't until like page 500 or 600 where I was like, oh, the narrator lies. This like omniscient narrator telling the story is lying. So getting past that, I was a little bit annoyed with the narrator for a second. Makes it a lot more enjoyable. But Dostoevsky also is putting in a ton of his own political and philosophical beliefs into the story. And Ivan is kind of the voice for people that he doesn't like for the political beliefs that Dostoevsky didn't agree with in his time. So he kind of makes like Ivan like the bad guy. Not really, he's not really the bad guy, but like he's kind of torturing Ivan because Ivan doesn't believe in God, and Ivan deserves better. Is all I have to say. So like, I don't necessarily always agree with what Dostoevsky chooses to do with the characters that he sets up, and like him putting the voices of his philosophical rivals, people who disagree with him, into like characters that we're not supposed to like. I don't know, it feels like petty. He's allowed to be petty, Dostoevsky. Like, I'm not telling Dostoevsky not to be petty, but I'm kind of like, come on, man. Especially because I don't agree with Dostoevsky about everything, so that can be like frustrating as a reader. Like, I can just imagine how annoyed his contemporaries must have been to read this and like have to feel like sit with the fact that, oh, am I agreeing with this pretentious 14-year-old? You might be. And that's kind of what I've had to sit with. Yeah, I feel like my overall impression right now is just that like Dostoevsky has created these like incredible 3-dimensional characters that I am so intrigued and attached to, and I care about so much and feel like fully formed individuals. So when bad things happen to them, I like get mad at Dostoevsky. I'm like, why are you doing that to my boy? Like, why, stop, leave him alone. But obviously also every character feels like a parody of themselves. So it can just get a little bit frustrating because I'm like, everything is kind of like parodized. Like nothing is really taken seriously in these conversations. They're all like smirking at each other and being coy and sly and giving like page on page on page of monologues. I'm so impressed by how amazing and full and rich this world and these characters feel. So if I'm upset about anything in this book, it's just because I'm attached to the characters, which means the author has done a good job. So I am really enjoying this. I don't know if it's like my favorite classic of all time. I think I have felt a lot more closeness to classics written by women. I prefer women in books to not be just like side characters to the male heroes. And obviously this book is a product of its time, so that's what it is. So obviously I'm not going to feel like as personal a connection to it because of that. At the same time, I am just like, I enjoy the challenge of reading a tough classic, and I enjoy the challenge of like really analyzing it and putting my heart into it. So I'm having a good time is I guess my update so far, especially in these last couple chapters. This book is really like a practice in patience, where I'll be like on a chapter that I'm like, this is really annoying me. Like maybe this isn't that good of a classic. And then I'll get to a chapter that just like completely blows my mind, and I'm like, never mind, this is genius. So I just have to hold out on the chapters that are more frustrating. I will continue reading, continue giving little updates, and hopefully finish it up today or tomorrow. So I definitely should have waited for the end of book 11 to give my update, because what happened after that went completely batshit insane, and now I'm annoyed with Dostoevsky again. So I am experiencing things with this book. At the epilogue, I have no idea how we're gonna resolve this in like 20 pages. I don't understand how we've read an almost 800-page book and nothing is resolved and there's 20 pages left. So, where's the sequel? I feel robbed, I feel cheated. Where is my ending? Where is the rest of this book? It is dark out because it took me a while to finish it today. So thank you for bearing with me. I don't know how to feel about this. If I end up rating it, like at this point it's an if I rate it, if I choose to rate it, it's gonna be a second until I decide to, because I have so many mixed feelings about this. It's a 5-star book. It's amazing. It's incredible. It's also so frustrating. There were also parts where I was like writing up rant reviews about it because I didn't agree with what Dostoevsky was getting at, or I couldn't really tell what parts Dostoevsky agreed with versus what parts he wasn't agreeing with. And I wanted to fight him at certain points, and we get no clear resolution to Ivan at the end of this book, which is devastating. And I need to get a clear answer on Ivan's story at the end of this, because again, he was my favorite. It was a terrible idea to film this directly after finishing it, because I'm still just thinking about the last few chapters in the epilogue, which were really, really incredible. I would say all in all, part 4, which is I believe the last like 200, 300 pages, the last like 300 pages of the book are the best part. Starting from the beginning of part 4 and unfolding the story of Ilyusha, I think. Going through the epilogue and having the full court scene was amazing. It was incredible. It's like 100 pages. Maybe not quite, but it's almost like 100 pages just of the arguments in court, which, you know, if you're big into law, it's kind of fun to see both how much and how little has changed in legal processes and due processes in lawyer rhetoric since the 1800s, it's actually kind of funny how much of it is still remains the same. And it's actually kind of funny how many of society's problems that Dostoevsky wants to bring up in this book that carry into the modern day, and also I feel like have always existed, but to the people of this time, to the people in Russia in this book, and people, like, whether or not Dostoevsky believes this, but at least the characters he's using as puppets in this book are saying that it's a turning point, that people are losing their morality, they're losing their connection to the land, the people, when in fact that's always been something that people have considered a philosophical problem, a moral problem, that human beings are always fickle and always changing. Yeah, I found that part of it, like, less compelling overall, just, like, because I'm not living in 1800s Russia, that like, part of the conversation wasn't really, like, that important to me. It was interesting, but it wasn't the part that, like, really got me. The part that really got me was just his conversations about love and money, and all those debates are so fascinating and are so well done. And I was just so invested in the way that he formed this conflict between the brothers and the father and their love interests and the love, I don't even know if it's not even a love triangle, it's like a love chart going on. Like, I'll give it to him. Like, there are parts where I'm like, this is like an actual love triangle by modern standards, where like the ends meet, because I swear Grushenka and Katerina, if this was the 21st century, they would have made a great throuple. I thought they would not. They would have made the most toxic throuple imaginable. They would not have made a great throuple. The love connections in this book are so scattered, and the way that everyone plays off is like Mitya and his father Fyodor's conflict comes down to the fact that they were both going after the same woman. They both wanted the same mistress. But in reality, that just accelerated the conflict that was already in existence about the money, and that Mitya had come in the first place to this town for his money, and that they might have always ended up going the way that they did, but then Grushenka takes the blame, the mistress Grushenka takes the blame, because she is easier to point to as the cause for the problem, as opposed to money, the abstract concept of money and passing down money and inheritance. And the ties of money in this book are always overlapping with ties of love as well. I thought that part was incredibly well done. I didn't love the religious philosophizing. I found it a tad trite, but it is of its time, so that's fine. I really enjoyed the discussions about society and morality and things like that that still feel very relevant. I enjoyed the love connections. I enjoyed the personal connections, but most of all, more than anything else, from beginning to end, I loved the three brothers, and I loved when they interacted with each other. It's almost like I got more attached to their like connections to each other because of how rare they were. It's just such a interesting dynamic of relationship connections between the brothers that I love. And I love Ivan so dearly. I would really love to know like more. I want to like go and research articles of people that analyze this book, because like, why is Ivan never referred to by any diminutives except for like occasionally and jokingly? Like, no one, even Katya, the girl that is in love with him and he's in love with, she refers to Dmitri, her former love interest, as Mitya, but she doesn't refer to her current love, Ivan, as Vanya, ever. And neither does Alyosha, the narrator. None of the, like, they always refer to Dmitri sort of back and forth between Mitya and Dmitri, depending on who's talking, but no one here refers to Ivan as Vanya. And it makes me so sad. Is Dostoevsky like making Ivan cold and detached from everyone else just because he's not religious? Because that would make me sad, okay? Just because he's not religious doesn't mean he doesn't love his brothers. And him loving his brothers doesn't automatically make him religious. Anyways, why am I arguing with a man who's been dead for 200 years? One of the last chapters, when Ketcha's talking about how Ivan talks about the brothers, who Alyosha thinks Ivan is totally cold, and she says, if you knew how he spoke, if you knew how he loved the wretched man in that moment, that Ivan Fyodorovich, who was still jealous over me and still convinced that I loved Mitya, nonetheless did not abandon the idea of saving his brother. And I'm like, yeah, Ivan would never abandon the idea of saving his brother, even when he's sick, even through everything else. I love Ivan. Yeah, Ivan was 100% my favorite, but also Grushenka and Katerina, as like hysterically as they're portrayed as women in the 1800s were written, I really, really enjoyed their characters, and they were very like rich and full characters that played such a crucial part in the narrative. So I did love them as well. That is the end of my attempts to analyze this book. I don't know why I'm attempting to analyze it right now when my brain is so totally fried. I'm gonna go not read for the rest of the night, probably. A 5-star experience, I can say off the bat, even before I've rated the book itself, I can say that the experience of getting to read it was a 5-star experience that oh my god. The fireplace is being dramatic. I loved pushing myself and seeing the connections and analyzing a text again. This is like my first really old classic, other than Jane Austen, since like high school even. So it's been a really, really long time since I've like sat with a book like this and like worked through it in my mind and enjoyed it so much and enjoyed that experience. So yeah, I've really appreciated that, and I've appreciated getting to vlog it as well. I thought that made it so much more fun to have someone to share my thoughts and opinions on, and my family and friends, thank you, so that they didn't have to hear about the Brothers Karamazov for the last 2 weeks. I want to sit with this for a little while. I'm so excited. I'm going to go and now search up all of the fan art that has been sitting in the back of my mind for the last year, that I was like, oh, I can't look at this fan art too closely because what if it gives spoilers of this book? Now I can finally go back and see it. There's one in particular of Ivan that I've seen on TikTok before. If I can find it, I'll put it here. That is what made me want to read this book, is fan art. I appreciate it so much, so I want to shout it out, and maybe it'll inspire someone else to want to read it as well. Hopefully this video inspires you to take on this book. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it as the very first Dostoevsky you try, because it was very, very long and it took a lot of mental energy. And I have luckily been on a bit of a snow vacation these last couple weeks, so I had the time and the energy to go skiing and read this and do very little else. But now I'm going back to my work life, and I'm very glad I'm not reading this while working, because that would have been misery. Lots of feelings, lots of scattered thoughts, probably the least coherent update I've given this video. I apologize. But I'm so glad I read it. Yeah, I think that's the most important thing when you read a book. I might give more thoughts in my end of month wrap up. I might not, but we'll see. But either way, thank you so, so much for watching. If you made it to the end of this video, which I'm sure is going to be one of my longer ones, please feel free to leave a comment below, like, subscribe, whatever you want to do. No pressure either way. I have a lot of fun making these, and that's always the most important part for me. I can't promise that I read a ton of classics on this channel, but I do have plans to read Little Women, Emma, The Picture of Dorian Gray, and more in this year, so more on the way. They put the hardest one first, you know, so it's all smooth sailing from here. Thank you so much again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!